Hi, everyone. So the last two Mishnayot of Perek Gimel deal with jars. And the Tosefta says that specifically, we're specifically dealing with, in general, we're specifically dealing with jars of wine, jars and barrels of wine. Now, this is actually not the first time that we're dealing with jars of wine. The Masechet started in Perek Aleph with two Mishnayot that dealt with containers, and in both of those Mishnayot, we talk about jars of wine. So this is actually useful as background to the two Mishnayot that we're dealing with today. So in Mishnah Gimel, this is part of a larger discussion about containers. But the Mishnah says, "Kadeh yayin stumot," sealed jars or barrels of wine. Mekom shedarkan limkor stumot, in a place where they were purchased in a place where people tend to sell sealed jars of wine. Yatsa kankan lechulin. The jars themselves are chulin. So we're dealing with a case where somebody is using Maa'ser Sheni coins and buying a bottle of wine. And the question is, does the bottle itself count as Maa'ser Sheni? Or is it batel to the wine itself? Is it nullified? Does it not count as anything compared to the wine itself, which you're going to drink as Maa'ser Sheni? And if this were if you counted the bottle as Maa'ser Sheni, then after you drank the wine, you would still have a bottle that was Maa'ser Sheni, and you would need to sell the bottle and use the money to buy food and then to eat that food in Jerusalem. Now, Mishnah Daled in Perek Aleph gives the other case. So Kadayayin ptuchot ostumot. So if you buy an open or a sealed jar of wine, mekom shedarkan limaker ptuchot, but you bought it in a place where people tend to sell the wine open, lo yatsa kankan lechulin, the jars do not become chulin. It would be Maa'ser Sheni. So the commentaries on this Mishnah sort of explain what's going on. What you have to imagine, somebody's coming to a wine shop where or to a place, Jerusalem, and they're buying wine, and in this place, usually people bring their own bottle. It's a BYOB, and you fill up the bottle from the barrel with the wine. So all you're paying for is wine. In this case, somebody is coming and doesn't have a bottle. So either they buy the entire barrel of wine that is open, or they buy a sealed bottle of wine. Either way, in this wine shop, clearly some of this money that he's spending, it's easy to see that there's sort of a surcharge for the bottle. In which case, you're spending Maa'ser Sheni money on a bottle and not on food, and you need to remedy that afterwards. Okay, so the concepts here are is the jar sealed or open? So ptuchot o stumot. And there is a concept of, are we in a place where people sell wine open or closed? Good. So with that introduction, we can start Mishnah Yud Bet. Hamashil kan kanim leMaa'ser Sheni, afal pisha gafan lo kana Maaser. If somebody lends jars for Ma'aser Sheni, so presumably you're lending somebody a jar to put Ma'aser Sheni wine in so that they can be transported. Even if they were corked, even if after you gave them the bottles, they were corked, lo kana Maaser, the bottle did not acquire the sanctity of Maa'ser Sheni. So that seems reasonable. You specifically gave those bottles. You lend somebody the bottles, but it's very clear that it's simply for the transportation of this Maa'ser Sheni. It's not for there's the Mishnah is teaching that they don't absorb this this kedusha of Maa'ser Sheni. Zalaf letochan stam. If wine was poured into them without specifying, and here the commentators, it's not clear what are we not specifying. So the Rambam goes one way, the Bartanura goes a different way. It's really unclear, but I'm going to go with the Bartanura. If somebody poured untithed wine into the bottle, and so this is tevel wine, then before it was corked, the bottle does not acquire Maa'ser Sheni status, but once it was corked and then Maa'ser Sheni was taken out of it, then the bottle acquires Maa'ser Sheni status. The way that Rambam explains this is that it's not about specifying whether it's Maa'ser Sheni or not, but it's about specifying, am I borrowing the bottle for the purpose of putting Maa'ser Sheni into it? So that's the first, or that's the second part of this Mishnah, which is around corking and uncorking, or corking bottles, and the status of the bottle. And now the Mishnah gives two other halachot that deal with corking and not being corked. Ad shelo gefan olot be'echad u'mea. So misha gefan mikadshot b'chol shehan. So now we're talking about truma. So separate halacha around truma. If you have bottles that are you have open bottles, and you mix up a bottle of truma wine with a bottle of with 100 bottles of non-truma wine, then the bottle of truma wine is nullified, 1 in 100. But once the bottles become sealed, the whole mixture. The whole mixture is considered truma. Next halacha, ad shelo gefan torem me'echad ala kol misha gefan torem mikol achat be'achat. Before they are corked, if you have wine where truma has not been taken out of them, if all of the bottles are unsealed, you can take a few of the bottles and say this is truma. But once they're all corked, you need to you need to take truma from every single one of them. Mishnah Yud Gimel continues this discussion. Beit Shammai Omrim, and it seems like we're still talking about this question of taking truma from corked bottles, closed bottles. Beit Shammai Omrim mifateach u'me'areh lagat. The jars must be opened and then emptied into the wine press. So if you corked these bottles and you want to take truma from them, you actually need to you need to open them all up, and you need to pour them back into the wine press, and then take truma from there, either from the wine press or maybe you could bottle them and then take some but you sort of need to start at the beginning. Beit Hillel omrim mifateach ve'eno tzarich la'arot. Beit Hillel says they have to be opened. But once you've opened them, you're basically at the original case. You're at the case of ad shelo gafan torem me'echad al kol. You open them and then you take truma from some of the bottles. Eino tzarich la'arot, according to Beit Hillel, you don't need to empty them back into the wine press. B'med devarim amarim, what are we in what situation are we talking about? B'makom shedarkan limkor stumot. We're talking about a situation where they tend to be sold when they're closed. Okay, so what is Bamed Devarim Amorim? What halach? We've just talked about 4 different halachot. Which one are we talking about? And so here the Mefarshim also argue. I'm going to explain according to just assuming that this is talking about this particular machloket of Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai. But there are many other interpretations of what this ways of explaining the next part. So we're talking about so when does it apply that that removing the lids is enough to specify that you are changing the status. B'makom shedarkan limkor stumot, when you tend to sell them closed. Aval b'makom shedarkan limkor ptuchot, but in a case where in a place where you tend to keep them closed. Sorry, we're not talking about the Beit Hillel Beit Shammai. We're talking about the question of pouring the wine into the bottles before they're corked or after they're corked, and whether that turns the bottle into Ma'aser Sheni. So the question is, does corking them sort of constitute or uncorking them constitute a change in their status in a place where people tend to sell bottles closed? Then removing the lid of the bottle is enough to show that that you want to go back and change the status. But in a place where they tend to be sold open, lo yatsa kan l'chulin, you haven't the bottle still has the status of Maa'ser Sheni, to not revert back to being chulin. But if he wants to be stringent and sell only by measure, so only by a certain volume, and so you're saying, I'm selling you this volume of wine, yetzakan kan l'chulin, the jar reverts to being chulin. Rabbi Shimon Omer, af haomer l'chavero chavit zo ani mocher lacha chutz mikan kanim. So if somebody specifies, I'm selling you this this volume of wine, I'm selling you apart from the kankan, apart from the jar, yetza kankan lechulin. Obviously, the jar reverts back to never gets the status of Maaser Sheni. It is chulin. So this concludes chapter 3, and tomorrow we'll continue with chapter 4.